So Mr. De Junquera is joining us today as the INCB President, does every year, to hear from and respond to questions from the civil society community. We'd also like to welcome Mark Calhoun, the new Secretary of the INCB, to the session today. Thank you for taking part in the dialogue this afternoon for me, but morning for people in Europe and depending where you all are in the world. It's lovely to be chairing this session with you both today, as we did last year, and we're of course hoping that next year we can all come together to meet you again in Vienna. I'd also just like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the INCB's ongoing support of the VNGOC and civil society engagement more broadly in Vienna, particularly through the role of the alert, or through the issue, of the alert presented by the INCB in late 2019, which highlighted the integral role of civil society in the development and implementation of drug policies. We're grateful for the INCB's engagement of civil society through these sessions every year and through the specific civil society hearings organised through the VNGOC to the INCB in recent years, and note the ongoing commitment of the INCB to continuing these discussions with civil society from Vienna. So I might hand over the screen to you, Mr. Junquera, to open the meeting.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair, Ms. Hill, and let me start out by saying that I'm very pleased to be here with you again, even in this COVID-19 virtual mode. Actually, I think one of the maybe few side effects or positive side effects of the COVID-19 is that we have gotten so used to these online meetings that in fact it gives us a much higher reach for these international engagements. So I think that may be a good thing that has come out of it. Again, I'm very grateful for this the invitation to engage in this dialogue. As you indicated, it is an annual thing here at the CND that we have an opportunity to engage and to discuss issues, and we greatly appreciate that opportunity. I understand you have just had elections, so congratulations, Mr. Bridge, with your re-election, and the other committee members who have been elected and re-elected, and again we look forward to continue that collaboration. In my foreword to the INCB annual report launched just a few weeks ago, I acknowledge the valuable role played by the civil society, particularly in terms of improving the availability of internationally controlled medicines, promoting a human rights-based approach, and providing prevention, treatment, rehabilitation, and other related services. You know that the recommendations of the board are in principle directed at governments and international and regional organizations, but of course we also encourage civil society to use these recommendations when you plan and you implement your work. The thematic chapter in this year's report focused on the hidden epidemic of drug use in older people, and I hope you will find those recommendations helpful. We very much appreciated the written contributions that many NGOs have given to us in preparing this thematic chapter, and we regret that last year in May 2020 we couldn't have an in-person meeting with the NGOs to discuss that, but at least we had a shorter meeting in September, and there was simply no possibility to squeeze this in. But we very much appreciate the contributions that you have provided to us for that chapter. I'm also pleased to say that during the 131st session, which is planned in the second half of May, between the 17th and the 28th of May, we will hold an online meeting again with NGOs on our thematic chapter for the annual report for 2021, and that topic will be illicit financial flows through drug trafficking and the impact on development and security. And we look forward to hearing the views of civil society on that, as we did in previous years. And given the situation of COVID that we currently have, we're still working out the modalities of the meeting. board meeting also is, partially in person. There are a few people who are able to travel to Vienna, but for the rest, we're all connecting online as well. But we'll work that out in collaboration with the Vienna NGO committee. So let me stop here, and I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure there's a lot of members in the audience today and members of the VNGOC more broadly that will be really interested in that opportunity in late May. So why don't we just jump into the dialogue? I can't see if George is here. George is the first person I have on the list from the Slum Child Foundation. Is George in the meeting, potentially under another name?
I can't see him, no.
Okay,
So can you read it on his behalf?
Yeah. Absolutely. So on behalf of George from the Slum Child Foundation in Kenya, George would like to ask, because of the COVID-19 situation, I know that country visits have been put on the shelf. What are the plans for when things come back to normal to make sure there is a more frequent visit to civil society in the different countries that you visit? This is where the real work is done, and they can give better and concrete information about implementation.
Yeah, thanks, and for that question. And that indeed is, is an important topic. As you may know, one of the ways in which the board works within our mandate, and in terms of monitoring the compliance of countries with the obligations of the convention, is that we organize country visits. And unfortunately, since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, that has not been we've not been able to do that for obvious reasons. And we will surely, when the pandemic is somewhat under control, we will surely return to that practice of organizing these country visits. We have, over the year before COVID, just to give you an impression, we did almost 20 country visits. Those country visits are always prepared in collaboration with the authorities of the country. We work out an agenda where we discuss the topic of interest to the countries, but also of interest to us. And it's all done in collaboration with countries. So also the number of country visits may fluctuate depending on who is ready to receive a mission of the board. It's normally a visit of about 1 week. There's a board member, there's somebody from the secretariat, and we meet during that week government representatives and from all the different involved ministries. But we also, really make it a point that we do meet with civil society during that country visit, together with the Vienna committee. When we say, well, these are the country visits that are being planned, we ask you to identify the relevant NGOs in the country that the board is going to visit, and the board will meet with those civil society representatives. We do that without the presence of government officials, so it is purely a meeting between the board and civil society, so that there's confidentiality of the dialogue. And again, we greatly appreciate your collaboration in that. The report that the board is writing to the country is also a report between the board and the country. And of course, we keep the sources of what we hear. We keep that confidential as well. We make it a point of really discussing with civil society in countries, because we do see that civil society is so essential to many aspects of a balanced drug control system, and you help to ensure the full implementation of by the governments of laws and programs, particularly in the area of prevention, treatment, rehabilitation, and social reintegration. And in fact, in many countries, it's often civil society that you're primarily, or even the only provider of these services. And I think without your presence and your active commitment, it would really be impossible to tackle the multitude of the drug control challenges and to address the negative consequences with drug use. So again, we have consistently stated that we really value your role, and we really make it a point that when we have country visits, and we hope that we can sort of after the summer try to reinstate those again. And we are truly committed, of course, then to discuss in each visit with civil society. Over to you.
Thank you. I know that our membership is very grateful for those opportunities and really looking forward to them in the future. And I'm sure you'll have a lot of interesting visits coming up after the COVID pandemic with all of the interesting and integral roles that civil society organisations have played in finding solutions to the pandemic. So I'll just pass over to the next question. I can see Nasli's here from the Canadian Centre on Drug Policy Evaluation. Nasli, you have the screen.
Good day, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to ask a question today. As mentioned, I'm with the Centre on Drug Policy Evaluation, and we're based in Canada, and my name is Nasli. So my question today is, following the CND vote on the World Health Organization's scheduling recommendations in December 2020, what are the next steps for the INCB in relation to medicinal cannabis? And specifically, how will the INCB consult civil society in those processes? Thank you very much.
Thanks. Over the last couple of years, we have been confronted as the board with a growing number of countries that are engaging in the licit cultivation of cannabis for medical purposes. And it became clear, in discussions with a number of those countries, that the requirements that countries need to comply with in engaging in that licit cultivation are not always clear. And it also became clear that we have, with countries that are already working in that area, that there is a bit of a diversity around the reporting and the information, what is actually required under the convention, what do we as a board, what do we want to see. So at the end of 2019, we had a first meeting with the major cannabis producing countries, and we had invited the competent authorities to come to partially come here, and we engaged in that discussion, and as a first mapping out of what the issues are. And that was also done in view of the upcoming discussion in the CND with regard to the WHO recommendations. We had to pause that process for about a year because it took time for the CND to really come to a vote. And of course, we couldn't move on with that discussion until the CND had decided on where the various cannabis compounds would land in the conventions, of course. Well, as you know, apart from removing cannabis from the Schedule 4, there had been no change. And we contributed to that process by indicating to member states what the implications would be of rescheduling some cannabis compounds or the various chapters of the cannabis within the 61 or the 71 conventions. As you know, the INCB does not have a formal any official role in the process, in the scheduling process. So after the vote of the ECDD, then it became clear, where cannabis is scheduled in 61 and 71. And then we continued with an expert meeting in January of this year, where again we invited a number of countries that are producing cannabis, but also individual experts to discuss with the countries and with the board, particularly around the information and the reporting requirements. The next step we had was another meeting with the major cannabis producing countries in February, again to go through the issues again. And in March this year, we had a consultative meeting with all countries or open to all countries, again, to present the findings of these discussions and to slowly try to come to a shared understanding and an agreement at the international level on the reporting requirements and the information that is needed to the board. Because of course we think that that's important, because if countries report in different manners, we're going to have gaps in the overall global situation around the illicit cultivation of cannabis. And so that is where we are at this point in time. We will continue with consultative meetings, because there are with countries, because clearly, although we have already come a long way, but there are clearly issues that we have not been able to resolve yet. There's discussion around cannabidiol, the CBD, and what is the status. There's discussion about what is industrial use. There's discussion on some of the scientific aspects on cannabis and the cannabis plant. There's discussion on interpretation on some of the articles in the convention. So there's still work to be done. But we also want to get input from civil society into that process. So we will be preparing a questionnaire, that we will be sending to you as well, and you will disseminate it among all your organizations. And we're also looking for a possibility to do something as we're doing now, to have an online meeting in that respect as well. The technology would allow us to do it. So we do want to engage you in that process as well and get your feedback in it. Of course, you realize that the ones who take the final decisions on this are the state parties. They're the ones who have the reporting obligations, and but we do value your input, and we'll work on that. And apologies for the lengthy answer, but it's probably good to hopefully to be clear on how we structure that process in a transparent manner. Thanks.
Thank you. I know our membership is very happy with comprehensive answers, and I know there'll be a lot of interest in that questionnaire and opportunities to engage in that topic into the future. So thank you. The next question we have today is from Eric Suevo from the Community of Anti-Drug Coalitions of America. Eric, you've got the screen.
Well, thank you, Penny, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Vienna NGO Committee and the INCB President for your time this morning. Our question is simply, substance use prevention is a sound investment, with every dollar invested having the potential to result in saving between $2 and $20. Yet despite these facts, substance use prevention has been underutilized, under-resourced, relative to its ability to reduce population-level rates of substance use disorders and related issues. Please explain how the INCB will work with UNODC, WHO, and others to ensure that substance use prevention is a higher priority with emphasis in designing, developing, and implementing responses to the world drug problem. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and I'm afraid I have to agree with your assessment that there is a lack of investment and really commitment in developing real and doing this sound investment in prevention and treatment. As you know, in the conventions, there's no international instrument or tool for that. This is one of the obligations in the convention that was left to member states to implement. So they're the ones who have to do that. And we agree with you that in many countries that there is not given enough priority to this area of prevention and treatment and rehabilitation. There's not given priority. There's not given enough funding resources into it. Many countries don't have the capacity and really the technical and the resources to do this and to engage in these evidence-based prevention programs. So we do urge, countries, and we do that repeatedly every year in our annual report, but we also bring this to the attention, for instance, during our country visits, that this is a really critically important area. And we work with our partners, particularly WHO and UNODC, although the board, itself is not involved in that, but we have more an advocacy role. But wherever we have the opportunity, we do recommend and we do urge countries to work with their national within their national environment, but also to seek international attention with UNODC and WHO, and particularly implement the international standards on drug use prevention. I think that is, an excellent document, and but it's clear that in this area there is a need, obviously, for added investment and for capacity building, but also an important role, an important advocacy effort to really work with governments that within their national control programs that they give due priority to this. If you look at the investments that are going into law enforcement or incarceration and so on, vis-a-vis the investments that are being done in prevention and treatment, if ever those data are available, but there's clearly a gap. So we totally agree with your assessment in that respect, and we will continue to work with our partners, including civil society, to push for increased attention to this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is from Etienne Fontaine from the Veterans Action Council. Etienne, have we got you?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you kindly. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. It is an honor to be here. My name is Etienne Fontaine with the Veterans Action Council of the United States of America. Referring to the INCB's cannabis guideline creation process, why has there been no civil society, patients, or medical doctors invited to help create these guidelines? Why has there been so little transparency? It seems that a lot of private industry has chosen to participate. Has there been any effort to identify or avoid conflicts of interest? Thank you for your consideration.
Yeah. Thank you. I think I partially answered that question, but let me elaborate a bit on this issue as well. Again, the guidelines that we're talking about, or let's say the document, is really about a shared understanding and a common base for the information and reporting on the data of the illicit cultivation of cannabis to the board. We have been indeed talking with the major cannabis producing countries, and we have invited the national authorities that in the composition of their delegations to participate, to also include, well, they're free to include whoever they want to include in their delegation, isn't it? So a number of countries, they have included their industry, the ones that have a lot of the technical knowledge, actually what you do in the cultivation of cannabis. There may be academia there. There are countries that have included also medical professionals in their delegation. So that is in the first meetings that we have with countries. It's really up to the country to establish who is in their delegation. We have also in the expert group meeting, we have also invited some of the industry associations or representative of an industry association. There were also individuals with medical knowledge there. And of course, the industry, normally the industry has an interest, isn't it? So it's not that there is, but they have an interest, but it's also clear what their interest is. And but they also have a set of technical knowledge in that area, a technical and agricultural knowledge. So we do have, we felt that it was important to engage them. As I explained, in one of the next steps, we will reach out to you as well, to the NGO committee, and with a questionnaire and with an online meeting. And that may also very much, involve physicians who are working in this area or pharmacists who are working in that area. So we do value, your inputs and to have transparency into the whole process, and to give you an opportunity to contribute to that. We're also looking at a way that all the comments that we are having, to process that in a transparent manner, and saying, okay, well, we get comments, what do we do with the comments? That we don't get a consultative process where we say, well, thank you very much for your comment, and we put it aside. So I think that is important as well, to be transparent in that respect. So again, the final decisions on this are lying with the state parties and the board. The state parties are the ones that are the contracting parties in this whole process. So that's where the final agreement needs to be with them. But again, we do seek input from your side to this process as well. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. The next question we have today is from Begum Özdemir from the Turkish Green Crescent Society.
Yeah,
Begum, I think I saw you. Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to firstly thank you all for this opportunity. I'm asking this question on behalf of Turkish Green Crescent Society. We are aware that there is a CND resolution 5710 that deals with preventing the diversion of ketamine from legal sources while ensuring its availability for medical use. What kind of state-of-the-art strategies are you planning to implement in order to ensure the prevention of its diversion from legal sources while ensuring its availability of medical use, which in itself is extremely critical during the COVID-19 pandemic setting?
Thank you for the question, and to start with the latter part, indeed, ketamine is an important medicine, particularly indeed also under the COVID-19. I think in our annual report and also in the statements we have called, our concern in terms of the availability of medicines in under the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly in the beginning. But I think also at this point in time we see, from several countries, we see very messages of great concern about the lack of sedatives and medicines that are used for COVID and for other patients during the pandemic. So this is a critical issue, and so we need to address that. And I've outlined, a range of measures that we've taken. As you know, ketamine is not a substance under international control. It is an important medicine, but at the same time, as everybody knows, it's also a drug that has been that is used illicitly in a number of countries in the world. There has been quite a lot of illicit use in East Asia, of course, but also it's a well-known party drug in Western Europe and probably in other countries as well. We're not sure whether that is actually a diversion from the licit production and distribution of ketamine, or whether this is all an illicitly produced drug. And looking at some of the quantities, it's more illicit manufacturing and distribution rather than diversion from the legal channels. So we have in the past, and in response to the resolution on ketamine, what has been done in that resolution is also to call out countries where there is a problem with ketamine to schedule that nationally, and in fact many countries have done so. We have asked countries as well to inform the board about what kind of national measures they are taking controlling and ensuring the safe use of ketamine. And what the countries may be reporting to the board, but on those national measures that they take, but they do that on a voluntary basis. And that information we make available again to state parties. And what we can see is that from that information that there are about 80 countries that require import authorizations, and there are about 70 countries that require export authorizations for ketamine. And again, over the many years, we provide assistance to countries that require that information. We share that information with countries so they can have an effective national control of ketamine. We also know, and particularly from the NGO community as well, who are engaged in emergency relief, that very often with the imports of medicines to emergency area, there are controlled substances that are included in the medicines kits that they are sending. And we're very concerned that often, because of the very strict measures that some countries have taken, that actually those controlled medicines are taken out of the medicines kits. And that may also, that applies to international controlled medicines, morphine or so, but it may also apply to non-internationally controlled medicines like ketamine. And that is one of the concerns that there is in the international community. So in short, it's not an internationally controlled drug. There are lots of national controls on it. It's an important medicines, and there's indeed use of ketamine as a party drug, and that's then up to countries to take the necessary control measures to ensure the safe use of the medicine. Over.
Thank you. The next question we have today is from Monica Barzanti from the San Patriano Foundation in Italy.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity for asking this question and for your time. Well, my question is the following. Recently, lawmakers in Mexico approved a bill to legalize recreational use of marijuana. In past year, INCB has repeatedly expressed its concerns to the government of Uruguay on the adoption of a similar legislation in 2013, which legalized adult cannabis use and cultivation for non-medical purposes. In which way is the INCB going to address this issue in order to favor the compliance with the legal obligation and to achieve the aims of the convention? Thank you.
Thanks for the question, and I can assure you that the cannabis is consuming a lot of the time of the board. Clearly, the developments around the non-medical use of cannabis in a number of countries are of great concern to the board. The board has stated unequivocally that the legalization or permission of the sale or use of cannabis for non-medical or scientific purposes, including at a subnational level, is undermining the adherence to the drug control conventions and may have adverse effects on the public health and the control of drug trafficking. We closely monitor the laws and legislative developments in all state parties with regard to the drug control convention, and we have again frequently expressed the concerns about the trends related to that we're seeing in a number of countries related to the non-medical sale and use of cannabis. So again, we reiterate also in our dialogue with member states and in our public statements that the legalization of cannabis for non-medical purposes is incompatible with the Article 4C. And we urge countries to live up to the obligations that they have under the conventions. This issue is widely known. It's in the Commission on Narcotic Drugs. It's this is all in the public domain. It's often difficult for those countries that are engaging in a national discussion to know exactly the precise legislative processes that are being followed. You've mentioned Uruguay. That is clearly one country that has where there's clarity on it. There are other countries as well. There are a number of countries that are in the process of developing legislation, and that whole legislative process goes through Congress. It may have to go through a Senate, depending on the political processes within countries. But we do keep a close eye on it, and we engage with countries as the conventions ask us to do, in a close dialogue with countries in bringing adherence to the conventions. So the approach of the board is consistent with the provisions of the drug control conventions, but it also aligns with the UNGAS 2016 outcome document and the 2019 ministerial declaration, which reaffirmed the international commitment to ensuring compliance with and the effective implementation of the treaties. We know that many of you are involved in these processes as well, and we're very much engaged again with many countries in that in a dialogue on bringing about their living up to the obligations under the conventions. Thank you.
Value is the result of what we do, what we think, what we plan. So the self is a sort of reflection.
Sorry. Sorry about that. I wasn't sure who was speaking. Just if everyone can remember to mute their microphones. Thank you. The next question we have is from Gloria Lai of the International Drug Policy Consortium.
Thank you, Penny. I'm actually going to speak.
Sorry, I thought it was Gloria. So
don't worry at all. We had a last-minute change. Thank you for giving me the screen, and thank you to the INCB for their commitment to civil society engagement always. Mr. Juncker, in 2017, an informal dialogue just like this one, your predecessor, former INCB President Werner Sipp, acknowledged the tensions between some of the obligations enshrined in the treaties, for instance, in relation to the cultivation and use of plants currently under international control, and the rights of indigenous peoples for whom these plants have medicinal and or sacred value as recognized by the UN. What concrete steps can the INCB take to redress these tensions between the treaties and the rights of indigenous people?
Yeah, thank you, and well, a very pertinent and a complex question as well, where we have several treaties that are involved. Let me start out by saying that the board is, as you know, fully committed in the implementation of its treaty mandated functions to the protection of international human rights. And we have previously and often expressed that drug control must be and is also fully reconcilable with the respect for human rights. And any drug control measures adopted by states should be designed to both safeguard the health and welfare of people and respect their fundamental human rights. Again, I've reiterated this in the annual report. I've reiterated again in our statements at the CND this year. The issue of indigenous people is a complex one, and if you go back to the signing of the 1961 conventions, as you surely know, in the Article 49, when the conventions were signed, in the Article 49 there was given a possibility for countries for a reservation with regard to indigenous use, to traditional use of drugs, whether that's coca chewing or opium smoking or marijuana use of cannabis. So countries had the opportunity at that point in time to apply that reservation under Article 49, which would allow them for a number of years, I think it was 25, to continue that use of drugs in their society. Interesting, and I was not around at that time, but none of the countries actually use that reservation, and so time has passed, and the obligation of countries to to comply with the their commitments under the convention is there. There's clearly an issue with how we look at personal use under the convention. But the INCB, we have called on states to develop balanced approaches to drug control policy that take into account the health and the medicinal needs of their communities, and medical use of controlled substances is allowed under the Drug Control Convention if states comply with the treaty requirements that are designed to prevent diversion of non-medical use, namely through the compliance with the licensing and control. I think the discussion in the board has always been that where there is, particularly around personal cultivation, the risks of diversion, how do you control diversion? So we do, we echo what my predecessor, Mr. Sip, has said at that point in time. There may be tensions, but at the same time, we can also see that the board sees the drug control conventions as respecting human rights as well, and we reiterate that no state is exempt from protecting human rights when interpreting the drug control conventions. And again, we very much appreciate that question because it reminds us that governments have obligation under the drug control treaties, but also under the international human rights instruments, and they must be mutually reinforcing. We do get a lot of questions, and we do see developments of countries, whether it's through their governments or through court decisions or Supreme Court decisions around personal use of controlled substances. And again, we're very engaged with countries on discussing that, but it really differs from country to country exactly what the legal environment is and what the arguments that are being put forward. So we're very much aware of these points, and we try to live up to both mandates, the mandates that we have under the Drug Control Convention, but also to be very mindful of the obligations that countries have under the human rights conventions. Over to you.
Thank you. The next question we have is from Stig Erik Sorheim from URAD in Belgium. Stig, you've got...
Yes, hi, I'm here. Thank you, Penny, and thank you for the opportunity to engage in this discussion. My question is really about the spillover of drug policy changes in one country to other countries. So it's really at the core of the conventions. With the emergence of a commercial cannabis industry in some legalized markets, we increasingly see that large legal cannabis corporations are investing in cannabis businesses in other parts of the world, including Europe. These investments are accompanied by political campaigns to change cannabis laws and regulations. What can the INCB do to support the global drug conventions in the face of this commercial challenge? Thank you.
Thank you. I think we talked already a bit about the non-medical commercial cannabis, but also on the growing number of countries that are engaging in the cultivation, the licit cultivation of cannabis for medical use. And as I said when I explained this whole process around the INCB guidelines, again, when countries engage in the licit cultivation of cannabis for medical purposes, there are a number of control requirements that they have to comply with, which are particularly under the Articles 23 and 28 of the 1961 conventions. Of course, we're aware that those countries that are moving into the direction of a commercial cannabis industry for for non-medical use. Again, this is an issue that countries will need they will need to live up to their obligations under their international conventions. So the fact that there is an emerging commercial cannabis industry that focuses on non-medical use is clearly a compliance issue that countries need to deal with at their national level. They are the ones that need to comply with the obligation. They're the ones that need to apply the Article 23 and 28. And if they see that there is growing cultivation of cannabis for an illicit, what is considered under convention an illicit market, then countries should take steps to deal with that. So we have consistently stated that there is an incompatibility between the commercially influenced actions concerning non-medical cannabis and the legal obligations that state parties have that are inherent to the treaties. So I think that issue is clear. And again, the fact that there is suddenly a big industry player in that area that doesn't exonerate the countries from living up to their legal obligations under the conventions. Over.
Thank you. The next question we have is from Kelly Becker from the Cannabis Education Guild in Canada. Kelly, you've got the screen.
Hi, thank you very much for this opportunity to ask a question and for your time today. My question is, what precautionary measures is INCB taking to ensure that the monitoring of activities related to cannabis include those working in the sector, the supply chain, and the chain of custody to prevent member states from allowing human rights violations to unfold?
Thank you. Important question again. We agree, of course, that along the regulatory standards present in the Drug Control Convention, state parties must protect human rights and which are inherent and inalienable. We are working with member states, as I said, on these guiding principles that will assist countries in the reporting and monitoring of the cultivation and manufacturing of medical cannabis, and we want to ensure those standards. We don't have a specific mandate, under the conventions to inspect for human rights violations in the cannabis sector. But we support member states to adhere to the regulatory control standards that are specified in the conventions. We have repeatedly, pointed out again that respect and protection of internationally recognized human rights standards, is an essential condition to the full implementation to the international drug control conventions. And governments as well as civil society organizations can monitor this developing business sector to ensure the full protection of human rights. And again, you raise an important issue, and it's important to be clear on the mandate of the board as well, with respect to the cannabis issue and with respect to human rights. So thank you for putting that on the or for keeping that on the agenda.
Thank you very much. That does end our questions that we had organized for today. We did have one question that we were hoping that we could potentially get answered if we did have the time, if you are able to answer it, Mr. De Jonquera. I might just read that out because I'm not sure if our member is present in the meeting. So the final question was on ECOSOC Resolution 1991/48, paragraph 10. which says that confidential materials in documents and records of the INCB in the position of the UNODC are protected from unauthorized disclosure. According to paragraph 8 of that same resolution, these confidential communications refer to communications undertaken directly with governments and other entities pursuant to the relevant provisions of the conventions. But except for the annual report, 0 documents of the board are available. Recognising that some communications do need to remain confidential, is there an opportunity for the INCB to make other materials such as meeting minutes available to stakeholders, as is common with other United Nations entities?
Important question. I don't have an immediate answer to that. There's there's a wealth and a diversity of correspondence and documentation and reports that as a board we're dealing with. That's documentation, or that's correspondence, of course, between the board and the state parties. It is correspondence between the board and other UN organizations. There's correspondence between board and NGOs and stakeholder organization. So, but I think you raise an important issue. We haven't, as such, at least in the few years that I've been in the board, discussed this, in a comprehensive manner. What we have done over the last years, as you are well know, that, for instance, we have decided as a board that every year in the May session of the board, we reserve half a day to engage with civil society, with the NGO committee, where there is an opportunity for the NGO committee to engage with the full board to have a discussion. We're very committed as a board to maintain that channel of communication, respecting, of course, that there are issues of confidentiality, but we really value that discussion. We do the same thing with state parties. Of course, before we had these open discussions with the NGO and the state parties, there were always times during the CND, as we do now, to have an hour, but we felt it was important to open up that channel of communication, both with civil society and with the state parties, and to have a discussion where you and also state parties, where if you see issues, and this issue of transparency is clearly an important one, that you put that forward. And I think I greatly appreciate that point, and I'm sure we'll take it back to the board and the secretariat, and to look for what more can we make available. Let's say, I think there's already, if you look at the website, there's actually quite a lot of information available. But for instance, if you well, you can imagine that the correspondence with state parties is, of course, confidential. But for instance, also the extensive information that we get around the manufacturing and trade of precursors is also confidential information, because of the commercial importance of all that. Because we have a lot of information around commercial streams of who is producing and exporting and importing these type of things. So it is a very complex issue, but I greatly appreciate the question, and we'll take it back to the board and see what more we can make available apart from what we already have on the website. And I think it's good to raise that point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I know that'll be very appreciated by the civil society community, as is your time today and this morning. Thank you so much, Cornelius, and also other members of the Secretariat, for sharing this hour with us on the last very busy day of the CND this year. We will wrap up there. We're right on time. I know the civil society community and members of the VNGOC are very grateful to have more opportunities to engage with you in the future, and and for opportunities like the questionnaire to be opening up. It's wonderful to see that we will have more and more opportunities to engage. Thank you very much for your time today and everybody for the interesting questions. And we might wrap up from there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and always a pleasure to see you and to speak with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Thank you to you.